with my title, which is rather technical, and ask for some explanations. Well, I'm coming from Serbia, as already told, and which is a small, developing, transition, and emerging country, all of that to some extent. Sorry, I have to see your words. Okay. As to the fact that it is small, well, I don't need to waste my time, but I would tell you something about the classification of Serbia into emerging countries. Well, as you know, in economy, this term is used broadly, and some authors started using them in scientometrics as well. Countries showing fast progress in science, and there are many of them nowadays, are classified as emerging countries, emerging nations in science. And Serbia's really one of them, according to many independent sources, such as Thomson Reuters. There are essential science indicators showing that we were pronounced a couple of subsequent years in a category of raising stars in science. Of course, you'll take this with a grain of salt, since there are some artifacts, some shortcomings of their indicators behind, but when you look at the other indicators from number of publications as compared to the number of publications in surrounding countries, or for example, at the impact factor of our national journals indexed by Web of Science, you'll find that Serbia is in the stage of fast developing in science. Now, what is more important is that all I'm going to tell you this morning can be relevant for Lithuanian situation or any other country only to the extent those countries can be classified into this category. There are many countries which are small. Small is, for example, Denmark, but it is big in science. So I cannot offer anything to Danish scientometricians. I assumed that the best way to thank the organizer for this call is to give you an honest, reliable report about our situation as a sort of case study. Now let's see in what way journals from such countries let's call them small, from small countries are normally described. As a rule, journals from such countries, locally published journals, but also journals in general are not self-sustainable economically. They have no market values. These are strong words, but I would say this is the fact. They are not edited professionally, but rather by volunteers, retired professors, and so on. They are not protected from a misconduct phenomenon spreading all around these years, threatening periodical publishing of the world as a whole. In some cases, those journals are so-called predatory, which means false, bogus journals asking for money, not for research results dissemination, especially if they are under access, open access. So, as a result, such journals cannot be trustable and, of course, cannot be broadly usable, for example, cited. And in conclusion, many people would say they are doomed to poor quality, low visibility, low diffusion, and, of course, low impact. As such, they are not indexed in citation indexes such as Web of Science. They themselves cannot be evaluated, lacking number of citations in Web of Science, for example. And finally, they cannot be used for evaluation of research and development performance in general. Evaluation is probably the most important thing in this whole story, since evaluation, a proper evaluation, is an instrument for development of small countries' science and technology. Let me just remind you that World Bank advise us to use 2% of our national scientific budgets for evaluation. The more you are poor, the more money you have to spend for evaluation, they say. So evaluation is something very important, and in our job on supporting national journals, this is the focus of our activities. Going back to the journals of small countries, let's turn our attention to some pros for their existence. They are no doubt a platform for publishing on topics of local interest. There are some topics of only local interest. The only place for publish in humanities, for example, in history or language. They are a hotbed of professionalism. Country doctors don't read top international journals. For authors, they are, in many cases, first stop on the road to mainstream journals. And for young scientists, researchers, they are a sort of playground, a place to exercise writing, especially on their methodological part. And finally, They are potentially international indexed journals. Some of them succeeded in reaching this level of excellence. So in conclusion, we can say that, this is our opinion, small journals are a sort of necessary evil of small countries. They are a part of infrastructure of those countries' research and development and innovation systems. You cannot extinguish them. You cannot prohibit them. You cannot let them die, which means leave them without any support. So if you can't do that, if you can't win them, join them, all you can do is to support them and make them better. If you live in Serbia or Lithuania, and if you're a serious person, you'll buy a German car. But you cannot buy German roads. You have to build those roads by themselves. So journals, small journals, have a role which is a sort of infrastructure of local science, of a national science. And I would say those who think this can be disregarded, this part of infrastructure can be disregarded, and all dissemination activities when it comes to the local findings can be communicated, can be done through international journals are, I would say, wrong. So the best way to support local journals, to our knowledge and experience, is to build something called National Citation Index. In Serbia, this is imagined about 15 years ago to serve as an add-on, as an extension of global citation indexes such as WOS. This is an old Eugene Garfield idea. Anybody who thinks we don't index sufficient number of journals can do the same thing and combine the results of our own with her results. Those were his words. National Citation Index is also built in Serbia to serve as a basis, of course, for generating indicators of journal performance, such as journal citation report, but also to be used as a tool for evaluation of other research entities. And this is what is done nowadays. National Citation Index is, I would say, a necessary so National Citation Index is a necessary condition for a proper evaluation. And I would say the best possible instrument of journal quality control. We don't believe in instruments such as author panels or expert opinions, and similar techniques used in many countries to evaluate local journals, which doesn't mean that we don't believe in looking at the quality of the journals by more or less the same way as members of such bodies do. And this is our National Citation Index. Comprising about 400 of national journals and covering all journals from 2000 on, and in some disciplines such as social sciences even from 1990 on. It is a sort of full-text citation database since about 1/3 of the journals, those of better quality, are available in full text. Full text is also searchable. All the references are normalized, so they can serve not only for counting citations to the journals, but also to citations to the institutions. I have to say, I have to point out that all the possibilities of such pretty reliable and I would say expensive resource are not used in our national research policy and in the process of author researchers promotion and institutional accreditation. But at the same time, I can easily claim that many universities, the biggest one, the ministry as a funding institution as well, in some sort of decisions use our data in a fair way. And this is, of course, our journal bibliometric report deriving data from our National Citation Index. We publish it once a year to be used as a ground for formal categorization of all national journals. All journals receive certain category by the ministry as a funding institution, and performance of the projects and performance of the individual authors are measured by pondering their papers according to the category a journal received. There are certain discrepancy between what we offer as our preliminary category and categories received by ministries' evaluation bodies, disciplinary boards taking care about various research disciplines, but we are trying to make this discrepancy smaller and are in a sort of constant war with those evaluation bodies, trying to impose our indicators, since we already demonstrated that they are burdened by a serious conflict of interests. Many people sitting in such boards are at the same time editors of those journals, so they cannot be trusted when asking for a higher category for their journals than they deserved in our report. Well, this journal is unfortunately not available, not accessible out of our national academic network, but anybody interested in our technology can just send me a mail and everything will be fixed. Anybody can use this report. The problem is it doesn't, unlike our National Citation Index, it doesn't have English interface, which is the basic reason why it is not available for international users. What else is to be done for our journals? This is our recent dilemma when we meet certain challenges in the publication world. You know that citation indexes are intending to measure productivity as well as quality, so to say, through citation rate, and measures that can be derived from citation rate, such as impact factor. Well, the problem is both of these dimensions of research productivity, research performance can be faked, can be inflated. And this is, we are bearing witnesses of ever-extending tendencies to do it in the modern science world. Productivity is faked by publishing bogus nonsense, occasionally, non-reviewed papers. When I say nonsense, I think of papers produced automatically by softwares available at the internet, who just constructed papers looking like normal scientific papers, but containing sentences having no means in English or formal logic. Productivity is also inflated by publishing duplicating publications, by adding authors who didn't have any contribution for the papers and so on and so on. You are very familiar, no doubt, with such tendencies. And you are also familiar with the phenomenon of plagiarized papers, which come into global attention with appearance of technologies to discover such papers, and of course explosion of retractions in international journals following activities of various free agent agencies like our center, or individual authors, showing that many papers are plagiarized and published in, sometimes published in top international journals. One of the highly regarded international publishers recently retracted 120 papers in one step. So this is a real threat to international scientific community, and I would say small countries, for obvious reasons, are victims, victims to more frequently than the other. Citation rate can also be falsified in various manners, such as excessive self-citing, such as misclassification of papers, which we heard of in a previous lesson by Henk Mood, and also by so-called donor citations or from a schema called citation cartels. A couple of editors, sometimes from the same publisher, simply donor their citation in a circular manner to avoid detection by producers of citation indexes. As I said, small countries are more threatened than the other. If you look at the map of Southeast Europe, which is our scope of coverage, we are a sort of regional science and technology observatory, and look at the journals in about 16 countries and territories. You'll find that many predators are already listed on so-called Jeffrey Beal list, which is, of course, of questionable status in today's scientometric community, but I would say that at least partly it can be trusted and could be used as a starting point to look at those journals more carefully. Also, we can trust more or less to Thomson Reuters, who started practicing dropping out or suspending journals on the basis of various wrongdoings in the citations from, for example, excessive self-citation rate of the journals to using citation cartels schema. Now, if we add to those figures what we found, this map got crowded. There is practically no country which is misconduct-free. What we added was cases of so-called offenders combining what we found by detecting plagiarism in those journals and trying to detect citation manipulation. And we combine those data into a variable called of offenders. We have the situation as it's shown on the map. Maybe some really small countries are not present on this web simply because of that. They practically don't have a sufficient number of journals to be used as a ground for international comparisons. The situation is, I would say, more serious in some countries, but I wouldn't be totally resolute in claiming that, since this large study is still in the process and these results could be best called preliminary. And we finally came to the quality enforcement as our strategic approach in treating our national and regional journals. We were inspired by several concepts coming from international standards organization, distinguishing between quality control, quality assurance, and quality enforcement. And this is a simple way to demonstrate the difference between among the three. We all are familiar with driving, and the fact that all vehicles have built-in speedometers showing us efficiency of our driving. Efficiency of how we control this activity. And when we use only a speedometer only, we can say the efficiency of this control is rather low. You can speed without looking at your speedometer, and that's what normally people do. But if you have a sort of device called tachometer or telemetrics nowadays, when somebody can show at the records of your driving, you are in the position to be controlled to much higher level extent, and you'll be more careful, especially if you are a professional driver. But if you have something very simple built in your vehicle, which is called speed limiter, everybody, including you, can be sure that you're not speeding and threaten other participants in the traffic. Since in this case, the efficiency of control is maximal, in this case and in this case only, quality control is enforced. And this is idea of our treatment of the journals. Of course, we cannot enter a publisher residence and just announce, all right, from now on, we have to do this. To the contrary, we ask them to join our program of journal quality enforcement to be controlled in their own interest and in the interest of their readers, users. And this is exactly what happened. The people entered our program and even funded it regularly, since the Ministry of Science, unfortunately, couldn't afford it. Now we have about 50 national journals in the program, which keeps us in better position to invest this money into development of additional IS support. And also to offer the same services to regional journals at the same time. What is the program our support consisted of? Well, first of all, we have organized using a plagiarism detection tool called Authenticate, which is regarded the most efficient tool for the job when it comes to scientific publishing. Plagiarism in regional languages are detected within this service by means of our homemade tool, relying upon citation rate, so-called related records. In other words, with relying upon overlap between various papers in the process of submission. So there is a way to register candidates for duplicated papers, and the rest of the job is done by hand, so to say, which means by human operators. We also have a tool called deduplicate to simply register if any of the submitted paper is already published. And finally, we have a tool called Site Matcher to look at the consistency between in-text citations and those citations given in the under references as cited reference. This is our model, and also standalone package called Assistant, intended for the job. And just for illustration, this is something intended for keyword standardization in journals participating in the program using this system. Keywords are automatically extracted from titles and abstracts of submitted papers by using International Thesauri at the editor's choice. After that, these keywords are offered to authors and editors to select those they are ready to accept, and add to them some other keywords, but also from the same thesaurus. So what we get as a result is a more visible paper, especially when it is indexed by browsers such as Google and visible in Google Scholar, which is frequent way to access our journals, our papers. Checking in-text citations, as described, result in a report as shown, warning the authors, to add a citation which is missing, be it in the text or in the reference list. And finally, we insist on a proper citation style chosen by the editor. All the references have to be formatted according to this style. This is not only for our evaluation purposes, this is also for the trust in the journal and journals that don't meet this criteria are perceived as a journal, as a non-trustable sources. Also, this enables us to link all the references to various international sources such as Crossref, and ensure that the article, if offered as a full text, is available to possible citers, to users and possible citers. Well, based on the experience with our National Citation Index, our Journal Bibliometric Report, and an application we also have that meet CERIF, Common European Research Information Format, and so-called CRIS architecture, which is, as probably most of you know, recommended by European Union institutions. Well, we finally produced something intended for the users in the whole region. This system comprises a tool to assist journals in journal management process, a full-text citation database, rankings of not only journals but also institutions, and proceedings in the future, projects and countries, which is not implemented yet. And finally, an important thing which we call Sesame Authors, data with profiles of all the authors publishing in journals indexed in the database, to be used as a sort of partnering tool for journal editors to enter this database and trying to locate the best possible reviewers, and for all other researchers to trying to locate partners for their projects, for their consortia, for their other needs such as exchanging information. This is something still in the process development, in the final stage of development, precisely in the stage of bug hunting. So if you find there some problems searching those sources, please don't be overcritical. We'll probably fix all these problems very soon, maybe in 7 days or so. We hope that our approach to monitor locally published journals in the region and at the same time assist them to become better can be feasible and in other similar countries as well. I repeat, to the extent those countries meet the definition of what I called small developing transition and emerging countries, or just idea of. And we also hope, and more of that, I'm positive, that similar tools, similar systems can be built in other countries as well, and in a shorter period, and for less money, and in the form to be most efficient and cost-effective. Since we lost, in a long period of developing our system, we of course lost some time searching for best strategies, waiting for authorities to decide about some things. It was a painful process which lasted too long and shouldn't be repeated. When somebody make a decision to do it by himself in some other country. We are aware of difficulties we are going to probably meet on our way to succeed in the region, to gather a sufficient number of journals ready to join us in a formula within a framework, economic framework we call the corporate and share expenses model. Since we are a non-for-profit institution, and this is the only way, we don't have a capital to invest in such projects, so this is the only way to develop this model in the region. It will be not easy for us for many reasons out of our control, such as political and economic factors that can be obstacle on our way. We are aware of that. So it would be fair if I say that it is still uncertain if this project is a success story or not. To learn that, we should ask me in 1 year's time to call me again, or if it is less expensive, to just to visit our website, and in 2 years' time, maybe try to find something interesting in the meanwhile, and just to have a look at what some people in a distant country do in these efforts to make our evaluation more trustable, more efficient. For those using QR, I also prepared the way to keep the password and the keyword and the username I offered. So I hope I left enough time for the questions. I'm ready to take any questions of the sort. Don't hesitate to ask me so-called uneasy questions.
Yes, please.
Okay, first of all, let's close our speaker, and now the talk is open for questions. Please. Yeah.
Could you please dwell on a little bit longer about manipulations, this specific type of academic misconduct? Thank you.
Well, it's long story, but let me illustrate the situation in our region by a small anecdote. We found that in Web of Science, 2 journals, Bosnian journals, are indexed, and that those journals are published by the same publisher of strange status. We also recorded that a great number of authors from Serbia are publishing in those journals. Only in 1 year, to our judgment, approximated analysis, only in 1 year, in one of those journals, authors from Serbia spent 200,000 euro to publish papers in this journal, which is very expensive, and asks for about 1,000 euro for a paper on behalf of author of publishing charges. So what we found after looking at the citations of these journals, and especially citations of Serbian authors, we discovered is that some of them pay not only in euro, but also in donored citations. They simply add to their citation reference lists some additional articles, citations to the same journal, or to the journal by this other journal from the same publisher. We recognized those references as just added to the list without being covered in the text. Quite peculiar. And we also found that those citations are added to the list of in-text citations when they use so-called Vancouver format, which means using just numbers of citations, not using author year format when citing in the text, which means they also just edit one number in the brackets of in-text citation, and so ensure the journal or the journal, other journal by the same publisher, one citation which is quite sufficient for those journals to have their impact factor safe and growing from year to year. This was a trigger for similar research in other regional journals, and we discovered not so strong offenses, so big offenses of the ethical standards and good practices, but we found something of such stuff, which means, in general terms, citation carteling, excessive self-citations, and so on. And let me just add one important thing. In some cases, those additional citations given to the journal didn't come from the authors as donors, but from the editorial board themselves, from technical editors. And don't be sure that in other journals you accept with trust you can find the same thing. Unfortunately, the competition between publishers and journals come to the point came to the point that various technologies are used to stay alive on the market.
Thank you. Very interesting. There are perfect journals. Another question?
It's related very much to the previous question. Since I read your paper about this story, you published it 2 years ago.
Yes.
About these fake journals. So it's quite relevant to this country as well. But my question is, you in your talk you were in favor of local journals. And also you said that you have to develop a tool to ensure quality. So it's a bit contradictory. You ensure publishing, but on the other hand, you should ensure quality as well. And in this case, you just referred to, in neighboring country, you have journals which do not follow these ethical rules. So what to do in this case? Whether maybe it's just simply to publish in real international journals, not in local or regional journals, to say. What is your opinion?
Oh, well, they are already international. They are accepted, these two journals. And not only them, let alone the story about Metallurgia International, a Romanian journal. Well, Razvan, my colleague, is well aware of the affair, starting with the announcement paper submitted by two authors from Serbia. They are already international. They are formally international. All the journals of the world are coming from some country, of course, and only some of them were trusted enough to be indexed to enter the corpus of starting international citation index by Thomson Reuters, then ISI. All right. These are two, I see those problems as two conflicting demands. Yes, there is a good reason to abandon a local publishing practice at all, to discourage it. But at the same time, as I try to show, we need them for some reason. And finally, if we don't need, they'll be there willy-nilly, volens nolens. Simply, people cannot be prohibited to publish a journal, and if they're mushrooming all the time and all over the place, in developing worlds. Every day you find something new in catalogs of the journals. All right, so my idea is leave them alive and control them, monitor them, control them, do it in as rigorous way as possible, and leave and simply discourage such practice of misconduct. Those papers, both of those papers were, I don't remember if it's visible from my article. No, it is not. Was withdrawn by Thomson Reuters, of course.
Yeah, it was not said in your paper.
But after that, yeah, that's what the sequence of this scenario. We simply sent the article to Thomson Reuters, and the papers were, the journals were not suppressed, but dropped out.
Thank you. That's